things that I've always tried to understand is why education values assessment over learning. And I think one of the things that draws me to why they want something that they can measure versus something that is implied or inferred is because they have to have a data point. They have to have something to prove. And you cannot always prove that a student is learning, even if, as a teacher, we know the kids are learning something because, guess what? They understand it. But that's not measurable on a test. And unfortunately, this is one of the biggest hurdles we as teachers face in our own classrooms and for our profession. I mean, say what you want about standards or just standardized testings, but they're giving you something to start with at least. And I have a lot of reservations about standardized tests based on my own personal experiences with them and how I failed most of them because what I know and what the test is testing for don't always align. Like they're constantly in, flux with each other. And so I feel like having standards is a good baseline, but it should not be the only measurement that we use to test student knowledge. And I feel that if we're going to look at standards, we also need to look at what we are witnessing in our classrooms, what we are witnessing our students accomplish and achieve in their own rights. And we have to maybe do a combination. It can't just be one, it should be multiple. And what so many, I don't want to say administrators, but a lot of them are administrators in the education field, whether they be principals, assistant principals, or even the school board, superintendents, or, if you're going to look at policymakers, a lot of those are just, in the legislature. And we have to figure out how to come together as a whole, as a community of people who are concerned about the education of our kids and come up with something that makes sense versus something that is merely just a data point on a spreadsheet. Teachers need to be put in a position where they're not belittled for what they contribute to the education of our students. We are the education of our students. We are the ones on the front lines making these decisions, testing them, and making sure that they're learning something so that they can become productive citizens and join the workforce or become a community volunteer work or whatever it ends up being. It doesn't always have to be one thing. And I think that factory model of everybody should learn the exact same thing and know the exact same thing and then just become, another brick in the wall, then you are not producing citizens that can actually think outside that box, that can go outside of that wall, that can produce a better wall. Why do we want to box up our students so much that they do not feel empowered to actually be a part of that learning process? And I feel like that if we did give students that empowerment to say, hey, these are my learning targets that I want to focus on, and they align with the standards, why are we not approaching from that, standpoint? We can look at it from two different perspectives. Let's take Thorndike and Einstein, for instance, and how, Thorndike was basically like, oh, look, this just happened. They must be learning. Whereas Einstein, a scientist, probably, one of the most brilliant minds that we've ever known, maybe not highest on the IQ scale, but let's take a look at that IQ scale. Is Einstein brilliant? Yes. Was his IQ at, 160? The highest? No. And he's got the same IQ as Jessica Simpson, and let's take a second to, put that in perspective here. So is that a measurable, like how do we want to say this? Is that a measurable approach to say that Einstein is not brilliant, is not, this amazing scientist that came up with some astounding theories that are basically still have been unproven or, disproved because they're still relevant today. Does that make him any, less brilliant because it wasn't measured on a scale that people consider genius? And then we have to think about that. I mean, is that subjective to have an IQ scale or an SAT or an ACT? I mean, do these things accurately measure what is happening or in the brain all the time, or just in that spark that you, like that tiny little moment that they are taking that test? And as a teacher, I know for a fact that is not the case. Kids are learning, kids are understanding stuff at a much higher level than what the tests are saying. And I know that we see that on the front lines every day, but what I want to really drive home is that we have to recognize that assessments are a power play, basically, by the people who fund education. They want to have, those data points on that spreadsheet to show that, hey, this is where the education dollars are going and this is what they're proving. Whether or not that makes any sense for a specific position or for that, community, if it is, say, a low-income community where, maybe the bar set a little too low, even though those kids are probably way smarter than the kids in, a suburban setting where the bar has been set high, but they're being assessed down here and being pushed through graduation because, some superintendent decided they're going to have a 100% graduation rate, which, let's be honest, that's unrealistic, but it does happen a lot. And I feel that if we're going to basically fake our way through education, then we should be able to counterpoint that with the data does not match what we are actually witnessing in the classroom as far as student achievement goes, and it should.